Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Women in Motorsport program here on Grid Network. I'm Ben Schneider from Grid Encore and LastCar.info, hosting this week in place of Joe Samaniego. Joe, we're looking forward to welcoming you back soon. With me tonight, once again, Emily Sharp. Emily, how are you doing?
So great. Thank you for having me tonight, Ben. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Looking forward to it as well. And before we get into things here, I just want to give a shout out, as always, to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. You too can invest in the Grid Network if you like what you see tonight or this morning, this afternoon, whenever you're watching this here this weekend. You can click on the link in the video description and join these fine folks in our Patreon here. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link also in the description box below. Or if you're watching on YouTube, we now have Super Chats enabled as well. And if you send us $10 through that, Joe will make sure to get you some Grid Network stickers. But if you can't contribute financially, that's all right too. We just ask that you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon as well so that you're notified every time we upload a new video or host a new stream. Now, we have a lot of F1 Academy to recap. Of course, we had a doubleheader this weekend in Miami, and we have some big news regarding a Netflix show that's coming next year. But first, the ARCA Menard Series was back in action at Kansas Speedway for the third consecutive weekend of racing for that series. 3 female drivers were in the field this past week, including Amber Balkan. Now, Amber toughed it out after a foot injury, but she sustained in a hard crash at Dover Motor Speedway the previous weekend. She drove to a top 10 finish, 8th place on the lead lap, and ahead of fellow series regulars Greg Van Alst and Christian Rose. Both are ahead of her in the points. Balkan is just 18 out of a series lead as things currently stand. A quiet day for her Venturini teammate Tony Breidinger. She finished in 10th place. Many anticipated her to have a strong run based on her third place run here at this same track in the fall. But not quite as strong for her this weekend. The car was a little bit off the pace. She came home 1 lap down from a leader, so hopefully she can bounce back when the series comes back to Charlotte in a couple of weeks' time. And finally, Mandy Chick, a friend of the show, former guest on this show last year. She was back for her home race this weekend. 15th place for her, 3 laps off of the lead lap there. And as I mentioned, Charlotte is the next race weekend for the ARCA Menard Series. However, the ARCA Menard Series East is back this upcoming weekend at the Nashville Fairgrounds. And Isabella Robusto will be back for Venturini in the number 55 Toyota. So we look forward to seeing what she can do after she had a very strong debut run at the ARCA and ARCA West combo race at Phoenix a couple of months ago. And finally, Jennifer Jo Cobb also made her return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this past weekend in the Heat of America 200. She qualified in 30th of 33 trucks. No trucks were sent home because of the 36 truck limit in the field size. So she was guaranteed to make the race. She came home 32nd, completing 128 of 134 laps. Of course, we know that her equipment is very limited compared to the top teams in the series. About where I would expect Jennifer to be running at this point, but I know that she was glad to be back for her home race as well, and hopefully we can see her back at the track soon later throughout the 2024 season. So with that, we move on now to our recap of F1 Academy, and race 1 saw Abbi Pulling put the car on pole ahead of Doriane Pin. It was a clean and calm first lap up front. Ariella Nobles knocks Tina Hausman out in the back, though, so an unfortunate start to her weekend. Bianca Bustamante also stalled at the start, but got going eventually, was last to the start of the first lap. She made it up to 10th place halfway through the race, but a penalty for cutting the chicane ended up dropping her back to 9th in the final race results. What some thought was the move of the race on lap 5, Maya Voog was under attack from Nerea Marti. The two created a big slipstream for Chloe Chambers to go 3 wide and pass both of them. And that led to a podium finish for the Haas Academy driver, her first podium and the first American to score a podium in F1 Academy. So we have a lot to discuss here as we go through the race results, and great showing for Chloe Chambers. Of course, she partnered with Jamie Chadwick in the W Series a couple of years ago with the Jenner Racing team. The only point that she scored was in Miami. That was a 10th place finish for her in 2022. But Emily, we'll start with Chloe's race here. How big was this for her to score a podium in Miami ahead of some other drivers in the competition here?
It was huge. And can I just say, it was great seeing the shots of Jamie as they were kind of panning to her throughout the race and qualifying. So it was great to see her back alongside the track. But back to Chloe. Wow. it was great for her podium to do it on home soil in front of a home crowd in a Haas. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but this was Haas's first F1 podium as well. So all around incredibly exciting. And I would argue, other than the big Lando win, obviously in the F1 race, that Chloe pass to me was the most exciting pass of all of the racing that happened over this past weekend. So it kind of gave me a little bit of Lewis Hamilton vibes from a couple of years ago doing the 3 wide and a quarter. So it was incredibly exciting. And again, I don't want to go on too long, but a very exciting move from Chloe Chambers in a race that we thought was just going to be a battle between Abby and Doriane, and she came in and was certainly a surprise for all of us.
Yeah, and as you can see on the screen, she's up to 4th in the point standings right now. Obviously, Abbi Pulling and Doriane Pin, I think, are the 2 championship favorites at this point. Up front, it was all Abbi Pulling this weekend, though, so I think sending a message to Doriane Pin, I know a lot of people, I think, expected this to kind of be a cakewalk for her based on her results in her sports car career coming into this series, but Abbi Pulling is making it clear that that's not going to be the case. I think we're in for a fitting championship battle here. We'll see if Doriane can close the gap here as the season goes on, but already a 34-point advantage for Abbi Pulling. Obviously, the caveat to that is the penalty that Doriane Pin received at the second Saudi Arabian race. But she now has a 2-1 race win advantage there. So, or actually 3-1, I guess, right? Because she inherited the win that Doriane Pin lost. So a massive points advantage here through 4 of the 14 races to start the year. But I'm sure Doriane's going to come back strong and make this championship battle an interesting one. So on that note, Emily, I'll just throw the question out to you. Are you convinced as well, because I certainly am, that we have a legitimate championship battle on our hands here between Abbi Pulling and Doriane Pin?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Ben. And I went into this race thinking that Doriane was going to also dominate it. And what a great feeling for Abby to kind of prove any naysayers wrong, that she didn't just, she is a true race winner. She won, obviously, as you had mentioned, the second Saudi Arabian race due to a penalty. So she came out here ready to prove that she has a legitimate race win behind her name. And she put it on pole twice. She won both races. And to your point, I think we have a battle on. The looks on camera that Doriane was giving at the end of the races. She was not satisfied with her second place finish in the first race and then third place finish for race 2. So she's hungry. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season, because I do think both of these women are very hungry to come out on top of the championship at the end of this racing season for them.
Yeah, certainly. I think when you look at Abbi Pulling's results, obviously she finished second on track to Doriane Pin in both races in Saudi Arabia, inherited that win. But the pace has been there. It hasn't been like Doriane was so far down the road at both Saudi Arabian races. Abby has certainly held her own. And then obviously this weekend, it was her turn to be the one that nobody could catch, and sweeping the weekend in both races, extending that championship lead. I think, like I said, she's made it very clear that, if Doriane Pin wants this championship, she's going to have to go through her first to get it. So again, we're not even a third of the way through the season in terms of the number of points that are on offer. So still plenty of time for those gaps to close back up and for things to change. But I think if you had to pick a championship favorite at this point, I think it was pretty unanimously Doriane Pin following Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that she got that penalty, given how strong her pace was. Now that we have a second race in Miami to go off of, I think you have to throw Abbi Pulling into that conversation, especially considering she now has more than a full race gap in the point standings over second place. So we'll see what comes of that. Now, let's move on here, talk about some other drivers. Penn was actually third in race 2 behind Bianca Bustamante. So a great weekend all around for McLaren. Obviously, Lando Norris getting his first win, and Bianca Bustamante getting a podium in the second race after a forgettable first race, like I mentioned, stalling on the start, but also coming back to earn that fastest lap points bonus. So she had pace all weekend as well. She's now 5th in points behind Chloe Chambers there, just ahead of Nuria Marti. So we're not quite near the halfway point. Like I mentioned, only 4 races in, 10 to go here. Obviously, it's still early. Do you think this is a 2-driver championship battle, like we were just talking about? Obviously, everybody's talking about Pulling and Penn at the top of the standings. Or do you think somebody like a Maya Vogue or Chloe Chambers, Bianca Bustamante could maybe get up there and close that gap after a sizable deficit through 2 rounds here?
Well, speaking after, as you mentioned, just 4 races, right now, currently, it does seem like it's going to be a battle between Abby and Dorian. However, I think that 3rd spot that the women are vying for it's changing week to week. 2 weeks ago, I would have said that's Maya's spot that she's going to be competing for. And even going into this weekend, she had pace in qualifying. And so what Chloe got done in that first race, and then Bianca in that second race, it was really surprising and really refreshing and exciting to see. So and Bianca also, to your point, had great pace. She stalled at the red light drop. Race 1, but she worked her way up from the last place to, I believe she got herself up to P8, and then obviously was, uh, you know, dealt a penalty, so she dropped down to P10, but she worked her way through that field. So that car has pace. So, like you said, great weekend for McLaren. I'm really interested to see what next race brings in Barcelona, just because this racetrack in Miami is notoriously tricky with the dust on track and just the heat and environment conditions. So again, we'll have to wait and see. It's early on in the season. We'll see if we get some consistency between Chloe, Maya, Bianca, or if some of our Puma driver has some pace, because they were also in the mix. So we'll have to wait and watch.
Yeah, it was P9 actually. Bianca ended up in the
P9,
first race,
thank you.
so not as bad of a drop there, but yeah, certainly like you said, the pace was there all weekend. Unfortunate what happened for her at the start of the first race, but we'll see. If she can carry that pace forward. The next race here at Barcelona, let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, we know Abbi Pulling will leave race 1 with the points lead, just by the mathematics there, having a greater than, I guess, 26-point advantage over Doriane Pin. But Barcelona's a track where a lot of these drivers have tested or raced there in some capacity in their careers. We know that the course is also obviously modified. The chicane layout has changed over the last couple of years, which I think a lot of fans are excited for. This could be a bigger opportunity for somebody to set up a pass there at that corner and create some more exciting racing than what we've been accustomed to in F1 the last several years. So on that note, do you feel like this is a wide open race, or do you still have your 2 favorites there in Pulling and Penn as the top 2?
I do expect those 2 to still be fairly dominant. However, I do expect a lot of speed from the women going into Barcelona. Like you said, that is a testing location for them. So a lot of the women are very familiar with that track. And with that comes knowing how to work the track and how to get the most out of your race vehicle. So I'm I do believe that it's still going to be pretty head to head between Dorian and Abby, but I am excited to see what some of these other cars and the speeds we're going to get to can bring.
Yeah, of course, very exciting weekend coming up in Barcelona in a few weeks' time. So we'll, of course, be back here on this show to recap all that when it happens. But in the meantime, let's talk about some news for F1 Academy that we got this week as well. Netflix is going to follow them this year, and then we'll have a docuseries in 2025. Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine and Netflix aim to propel F1 Academy to the same height that F1 has achieved in recent years with Drive to Survive, particularly here in the United States. So, Emily, how big of an opportunity, how exciting of an opportunity is this for F1 Academy to be put front and center in front of a large mainstream audience in media in terms of being on Netflix?
It's huge, and it just continues to get better and better for F1 Academy, the drivers and fans of the series. The Charlotte Tilbury news was so exciting, and this is just incredibly exciting for the platform that Netflix is going to provide for these drivers and the series as a whole. We all talk about it in this industry, the Drive to Survive effect. It is Formula One is part of our culture. I feel like I'm having more discussions about that series with non-racing dedicated fans, and just with general public than I've ever had in my lifetime. So to see what the potential that this show is going to bring for F1 Academy, and the bigger scope for women racing, and women in motorsports as a whole, some of the people that you see behind the scenes, and just women in sports in general, I think this is an incredible platform. And I think this is just going to continue to bring the series to bigger heights. I'm going to be interested to see a year from now when we're talking about F1 Academy together, Ben. I'm interested to see where the series is going to be after that show comes out onto Netflix.
Yeah, I think Netflix is obviously a massive, massive opportunity for any series that gets that kind of platform. We've seen it in NASCAR with their documentary this offseason, and IndyCar now getting 100 Days to Indy, even though it doesn't air first run on Netflix. The first season coming on there, I think, is going to give them a little bit of a boost. So to have that, maybe not be able to capture lightning in a bottle the same way F1 did in 2020 because of obviously very unique circumstances with the pandemic, everybody being trapped inside. Turning to Netflix and seeing that on the front page there, I think that's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity that F1 was able to take advantage of. But that's not to say that F1 Academy can't take advantage of something similar and use that opportunity to help boost that series up as well. So, obviously the timing of the pandemic and everything, like I mentioned, that I think really helped introduce F1 fans to Drive to Survive. And we saw it in the ratings this week. I think having Lando Norris win the race and take the lead there, I think certainly helped the ratings there towards the end. It wasn't just the Max Verstappen show. I think a lot of those fans that got interested in the series and then saw the amazing battle between Max and Lewis in 2021, I think have kind of been in for a rude awakening the last couple of years, seeing how dominant Red Bull's been. But, now we have something new here with this new series coming out to Netflix next year. So do you think that this might also be part of an opportunity to capitalize on keeping the F1 audience by introducing them to what F1 has going for them on the F1 Academy side of things?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I feel like F1, I mean, not just me, Americans tuned into the Miami Grand Prix this past weekend, and everyone across the world did as well. And so, to what I've said earlier, it is bigger than ever, especially here in North America. And we are tuning in. We want that content. So we are going to continue to tune in to whatever content that we can get. So we are going to go and seek out the F1 Academy Netflix show. So I think it's kind of like the circle of life at this point. Like the F1 fans are tuning in and supporting F1 Academy. F1 Academy, the women in that series and the fans that are brought in supporting those drivers, they're going to be by default like wanting more content as well, and tuning in and getting the F1 races to kind of feed their intrigue and interest. So it's really a circular experience for all of the fans. When they get into one, they tend to get in the other. When I talk to my friends and family in my life, my passion has bled into them, and they are now into Formula One and F1 Academy. So it's an all around experience, and it's good for all of the series.
Well, and sponsorship is always good for anybody in the world of motor racing. Obviously, this is a very expensive sport to be a part of, and you just look at F1 Academy and some of the sponsors that they've been able to bring in. Obviously, having all 10 teams partner with a driver in this series brings a lot of those same sponsors. You see the same BWT livery on Abbi Pulling's car, which you see on the Alpine cars in F1. But we also have some new partners as well. Tommy Hilfiger backing an entry in this series. Of course, they've been around F1 in some capacity as well. But Puma coming up from the W Series, which they were a part of as well. Charlotte Tilbury, like you mentioned earlier in the show. Emily, that I think brings some more marketing opportunities as well. And then Just Edgar had American Express, one of the big 4 credit card processors and companies here in the United States, on her car this weekend as well. So, a lot of great sponsors coming in to this series. I think that only continues to help its image as well. But how impressed are you with the progress that F1 Academy has made from, obviously the questionable announcement, given the state of the W Series was in at the time that it was announced in kind of the 22-23 offseason, to where we are now actually having the races televised and all of these sponsors coming in? How impressed are you with the progress that's been made?
I came into F1 Academy with the best hopes, and in all honesty, Ben, I cannot tell you how excited I was to get on here and talk to you about this just for my family's sake, because I've been talking their ears off how excited I am about the Netflix show. To go from a questionable announcement and mixed reviews to getting a show on Netflix, which is the biggest streaming service. It's just incredible. And I will say, shows like ours, people in our community, we're talking about it. We're furthering that platform. So to see like where this has gone in 2 years, it's incredible. Again, just getting some of the more recognizable names from F1 to go to those races, and now we're getting it televised and we can tune into it and watch it on ESPN, and on YouTube, and now we're getting a Netflix show. Just the growth. I have a lot of hope to see that this is not the final stop for women in motorsports, and we are just on the tip of the iceberg, and we're about to go even farther that I would have never imagined as a little girl who used to watch racing. So I'm excited for what the next 5 to 10 years looks like for women.
I think it's a great time for women's sports in this country in particular. And, I couldn't help but laugh. I noticed we got a comment on last week's show from somebody that just said, no one cares. And I couldn't hold my tongue. I had to respond back and say, well, I don't know if you saw this, but, and I'm sure it's gone up by now because this was a few days ago, 126,000 people on YouTube alone watched the opening race. And like I said, the archive of the stream is still available. So I'm sure that the numbers only continue to rise. But, if 126,000 is nobody in your mind, then I guess, maybe you're right. Nobody cares in that sense by the numbers that you're thinking of. But, we all know in all seriousness, obviously, like you mentioned, Emily, we're talking about it here on this show, and this show is bringing in the amount of viewers that it is, but nothing compares to the platform that Netflix is and the platforms of YouTube and, ESPN, where you can watch these races live now. So I think the timing has never been better for anybody looking to invest in women's sports, and particularly here in F1 Academy, having the F1 brand attached to this series, and obviously being on YouTube and ESPN for everyone to watch, and then being on Netflix next year with the documentary is only going to continue to make this series stock rise. So certainly I'm with you. I'm looking forward to seeing where this series goes in 2025 and beyond. I think it's much better positioned than the W Series was to have a long-term and sustainable future. So I think it's going to be good.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Women in Motorsports. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, thank you again to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Your support means the world to us. It's what allows us to host shows like this and continue to expand our motorsports media coverage here at Grid Network. I'll be back out at Portland in just a few weeks' time with Joe Samaniego doing that race weekend again. And your support is a big reason why. So thank you so much for that. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, you can join them if you like what you saw on this episode today, if you like what you see on our channel, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. Thank you to the fine folks on your screen here who have already contributed through that or through the YouTube Super Chats, which we now have enabled as well. Or if you're watching us after the fact, since I just realized, of course, that this show is not live. We're recording this, but we also have the Super Thanks enabled for the shows that are not live and for the YouTube clips that we post after the fact as well. So you can contribute through that if you feel so inclined, but no pressure as always. The biggest thing you can do to support us is just follow us on all of our social media platforms, and specifically right here on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the bell icons so that you're notified every time we upload a new video, and stay tuned for more of our coverage this upcoming weekend. NASCAR is back with a throwback weekend at Darlington. The month of May kicks off with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Grand Prix on the Indy Road Course there, and then we're gearing up for a big month with the Indianapolis 500, Monaco, NASCAR back at Charlotte. We've got an exciting few weeks coming up, and then, like I alluded to just a couple of minutes ago, we'll be back on site at Portland for the Xfinity Series and Arca Menard Series West coming up as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that and all the great coverage we've got coming up for you on the Grid Network in the coming weeks. For Emily Sharp, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on Women in Motorsports.
Bye.